This is Steve Halleck of TikToking, back with another mega TikToking review, one of my all-time favorite watches. Now, as always, you can find me at Steve Halleck on Instagram, and you can see all my watches for sale and the ones that I've sold at TikToking.com. Before we start, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please hit subscribe. And of course, if you like this video, please give it a like on here. I know it sounds silly, but it helps the algorithm rank the channel and helps other people find these videos, which is ultimately my whole reason for making them, is just to share really good watches with as many people as I can. So let's dig into this thing. This is the Jaeger Coultre JLC Gyrotourbillon 1. And this is really a historically important piece and just a super, super cool watch. So let's see what we're dealing with here, and then we'll get into why it's interesting and why it's appropriate. So, of course, Gyrotourbillon 1, Gyrotourbillon. That's the main thing. The main focus of the dial is this wild multi-axis tourbillon right here. And we're going to go further into that later, but let's just do an overview of the complications here. So over here, super useful and overlooked 8-day power reserve. Makes a huge difference in what it's like to actually own and wear a watch like this, to have a long power reserve, especially when dealing with the next complication, which is a perpetual calendar. Now, a lot of people don't even know that this watch has a perpetual calendar because it's called the Gyrotourbillon, and because the calendar is sort of a little bit hidden, certainly doesn't look like any other perpetual calendar. People think that this is just kind of like a time-only watch, maybe with a date and a Gyrotourbillon, but it has a full perpetual calendar that's actually pretty interesting in a way that I've never seen another calendar work. And the last complication is another incredibly complex complication that you rarely find, and that is a running equation of time. So that you see with this little sun hand here. Okay, so what does all that mean? Well, equation of time, let's start with. This is something that a lot of people don't understand, but it's actually a very simple thing. If you think of time, where it is, wherever you are here, it's 8:23, right? Well, okay, that's something that the government basically sets the time and time zones and standardizes it across whatever borders it's standardized on. But obviously, that is not connected exactly to what we think of real time, which is, having to do with the sun and the movement of the earth. So that, let's call it civil time. I think the technical term for it maybe is mean civil time, something like that. But anyway, the equation of time shows solar time. So that's basically for the location where it's calibrated. If you were to put up a sundial, what time would it show? That's what solar time is. And what it shows here is the difference between the time that it actually is in relation to the sun and the time that your clocks would show that it is in your location. It's pretty cool because it's not a linear relationship. The Earth travels along sort of a non-circular path, and also because the Earth is at an angle, it changes over the year. So you see this hand sometimes go closer on the downside, sometimes go close to the upside, sometimes go here, and it changes even throughout the day, its distance. It sounds silly, but it's actually a pretty cool thing to have because you can really see it. It's a very live complication because it's changing all the time, and it does give that connection to the full astrological version of time. So, okay, something really cool. Let's go to the perpetual calendar. You can see two hands here, this hand here. There's a lot going on. It's actually quite simple. The hands for the perpetual calendar date, you can see axis from here, but come all the way down there. Well, we've got a problem if it were to go that way because the main pinion for the time is in between. So what they did, since this is a sort of spare no expense, go nuts watch, they made it a double retrograde date. So this hand goes from 1 to 16, and at 16, it retrogrades back to before the 1. And this hand goes from 16 to 31, and after that, it basically stays up here. So at 16, this hand will have come to 16, this hand retrogrades back to 16, and they both come together to touch the 16 perfectly. At the end of the 16th, the 1 flies back here, and the other continues to 31 and then rests over there. So really cool way to do that. This is your date, your month of the date down here. So you can see it's January 3rd right now. And on the back, you have a leap year indication there, so you can set it properly. And then this is the separate month indication for the equation of time to make sure you've got that set properly. Now, while we're looking at the back, this is sort of a cool view you never really see of the Gyrotourbillon. Most people show the dial. This is a kind of very famous, iconic dial in the watch world, right? Everybody knows the Gyrotourbillon, this gyro, that cool, you can see it's actually a sapphire bridge over the mechanism there. So kind of everybody knows this, but you rarely see photos of the back. You know, very few people own this watch, and so you just don't see like owner pics. And Jaeger didn't market the back that much, but it's really a stunning movement. A lot of different finishes going on and just incredibly complex. I think there's over 750 parts. It's 117 joule movement. It's like full on mega horology here. This is not, you know, minimalist in any way. This is full maximalist. Let's show the world what we can do type of horology here. And it's very cool to see. Another cool feature, I hope it shows up, but the barrel cover is actually made out of sapphire. So you can see the mainspring there, and normally that would be covered, you know, with a metal cover here, but it's actually sapphire. So you can see all the way down to the main plate there, and you can see obviously all the wheels and the mainspring inside. So that's a cool touch. I don't think I've ever seen that in another watch, except maybe, you know, a full sapphire watch or something. So something cool and way ahead of its time. And when we talk about ahead of its time, I think this is an interesting kind of break between older watchmaking and newer. In the 90s, a lot of these horlogerie brands started doing kind of mega complicated stuff, but it was usually with kind of layering old school complications together. That's how they would get to their really complicated, you know, let's show them what we can do type of watchmaking. In the kind of what I call contemporary horology, a lot of that is either reimagining classic complications or inventing new ones. And a lot of it is in the aesthetics of it. So it may be, you know, think of an MB&F legacy Perpetual. That's taking a classic Perpetual calendar, first of all, reimagining it to work in a better way, but also arranging all the wheels and all the gears and everything to turn it kind of into a mechanical sculpture. So that's really a good show of contemporary horology. This is sort of in between, where they have made, at the time, this was a totally novel take on a tourbillon. Nobody had experimented like this with that complication, and layered it with several very classic complications and made it in an aesthetically interesting way, you know, with the architecture of the dial and the layout and the movement and this double retrograde Perpetual calendar, actually triple retrograde if you count the month here. And so all of those things together kind of gave a little bit of the old and the new. It is a classic watch, but it incorporates a lot of modern production and reimagining of complications, and also particularly made in a new aesthetic kind of a way. So I think it's very important in the kind of history of horology in that sense, aside from just being an iconic piece. Now this is cased in platinum. This is the main variant of this watch. They came out with a few later, but this is sort of the iconic version. It was a 75-piece edition. They're numbered on the back. And the case is 43 millimeters. It's fairly thick, but it's not crazy. It was big by mid-aughts standards, but by today's standards, it's actually wears in a pretty classic way. I'll show it to you on my wrist in a bit. But let's dig into the Gyrotourbillon itself first. Now, this is different than a Grubel-Forsey multi-axis tourbillon in some respects. It obviously is tackling the same problem, which is that a tourbillon which rotates only in the flat plane made sense when people held their pocket watches like this. But as soon as you got the watch on your wrist, to counteract the effects of gravity meant that you had to move out of that plane. So Grubel-Forsey basically has a flat tourbillon plane, and then they angle a balance wheel and they rotate the balance wheel in that plane as well. Their various tourbillons do that at different angles and stuff like that. But the tourbillon itself rotates on the same axis as the balance wheel rotates for the inner tourbillon there. On the Gyrotourbillon, you have this big cage, and that's because you have basically an outer tourbillon at an angle. That's anchored on this really cool gold bridge there. So that's the angle of that one. They don't specify what it is like Grubel-Forsey, but it's something like that, right? And the inner cage is a spherical cage that's going around these spherical gears. So the balance wheel is actually rotating on itself rather than like that. The whole thing is turning around within this other tourbillon that's turning around. So it's a different execution. It definitely gives more variance to the position of the balance wheel. Which one in practice works better? I don't know. But it's sort of a more complex take on that principle. You can see it's also got a seconds hand that's anchored there, which is actually pretty cool because they've curved it around this spherical cage. So you've got that blue hand. Nice, neat touch. And again, the fact that it's executed with these bridges in gold with the inner cage in the sort of gray that matches the dial really aesthetically makes it stick out. Again, just take a look here. This smoked piece of sapphire lets you look at the inner workings there, but makes sure that your eyes can go to the time telling and the date telling really easily. They made a variant of this later where this was all transparent, so you see all the workings there, which is cool. It's always cool to see extra parts and stuff, but I personally think that an execution where they've really taken the time to focus you on what's important while still giving you hints of these things is just a little bit more refined, more interesting, and more keeping with the original intent of the watch. Okay, let me show you on my wrist. I immediately put this on a casual strap. Obviously, it would come on like a black croc. This is a flagship watch for one of the premier kind of classic watch brands. So to them, it's a very serious watch. I'm not a very serious guy in my own personal style. You can see this watch has definitely been worn. It's platinum, so platinum watches tend to pick up these little hairlines if they are worn at all. It's been worn, carefully. There's no dings or scratches or anything, but it does have these hairlines everywhere. So when I got it, I figured may as well wear it. So I put it on this leather strap, which I think really dresses it down nicely and makes it quite a wearable sort of daily wearer of a watch. And in fact, it's been hard to get this off my wrist since it came in stock. Look at those ruthenium bridges glowing in the light. All right, let's pop it on. Comes on a deployment buckle. Nothing interesting about the buckle. It's sort of a standard early 2000s, not particularly great, but it gets the job done. Deploy it. And there you go, 43 millimeters. It fits my wrist great, totally wearable. You know, after getting used to the bigger watches that come out now, this is just a completely super wearable watch. And you can see on this strap, it's really well dressed down to the point that you can see, obviously, that it's a mega watch. You know, it doesn't take anything away from how spectacular the watch is, but I find that the color, you know, it brings out some of the colors a little bit better, and it makes it so that you could very easily wear this with just jeans and a t-shirt and have it just be a sort of cool companion, which is, I think, you know, a great way to use something like this. It's got the perpetual calendar. It's got the 8-day power reserve. Why not wear it, you know? So there you go. There's the JLC, Gyrotourbillon 1. They don't get much better than this, especially from these bigger brands. This is a big brand flexing its full might of what you can do when you've got the state-of-the-art factories and you can pay the best watchmakers and the best designers and, you know, just every resource in the world to make a flagship product. This is what you get. So it's really the best of the best of, you know, mid-aughts horology all in one piece. I'll let you guys look at that Gyrotourbillon turning as we sign off here. Again, if you liked this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and you know, send these to your friends if you have friends that are into watches, just to show them what a great, cool watch can be. Most people never get a chance to see something like this. So that's kind of my purpose in making these, is to share this really cool stuff with you. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be back with more videos soon.